سلام عرض میکنم. Good evening. My name is Abbas Milani. I direct the Iranian Studies Program here at Stanford. I welcome you all to our program tonight. Special note of gratitude to Ms. Shirin Ebadi for graciously and generously accepting our invitation to join us. In the course of the last few years, her willingness to accept all of our invitation and participate in many of our programs has been for me a humbling honor. I also welcome some of Stanford's luminaries who have accepted our invitation to be here tonight. We are celebrating the singular life of Shirin Ebadi, screening a movie that chronicles aspects of that life and at the same time invariably showing solidarity with the unique movement in Iran's history and the women's movement for gender equality and secular democracy as it is happening in Iran these very days. These are, I think, the most historic challenges to the Iranian regime in the last 44 years, and they embody the best aspirations of Iranian women and Iranian men. By sheer coincidence, and as another indicator of the indispensable role of women in Iran's fight for democracy, are two other events this week. Both highlight women. To introduce Ms. Ebadi, Mr. Hamid Moghadam has agreed to say a few words. In the Stanford community, Hamid needs no introduction. But as we are live streaming this event on our Instagram, let me just say Hamid represents the best of the Stanford's tradition of entrepreneurship in America, of the Iranian diaspora, and its dedication to a democratic Iran. He's a co-founder and CEO of one of America's most successful corporations, and I have seen how, over the last 20 years, every hour of every day, he's also thinking about Iran and how he can help the transition to a better tomorrow. After his comments, we will screen the second half of the film that focuses on Mrs. Ebadi's human rights activities. The screening will be followed by Professor Debra Satz, the Dean of Stanford School of Humanities and Sciences. By the time our details for tonight were finalized, her schedule was already full. We were particularly grateful for her willingness to juggle her busy schedule and make room for this event. But her effort is, in one sense, completely understandable. Her acclaimed work of scholarship are all focused on questions of ethics, justice, feminism, democracy, and why certain things should not be for sale. The contours of Shirin Ebadi's life is a living tale of these conceptual discussions. The comments will then be followed by a question and answer period with Ms. Ebadi. There will be mics on the aisles where you can ask your questions. She will answer them in Persian, and I have the honor of translating them for her. This event has been sponsored by the Iranian Studies Program and the Freeman Spogli Institute, and thus closing remarks will be made by Professor McFaul, the director of that institute. Professor McFaul, as well as Professor Diamond, both eminent scholars of democracy, have played a critical role in the evolution of Iranian studies at Stanford and the Iran Democracy Project at Hoover. The success of tonight's event, as well as all of our other events, is more than anything else due to dedication, congeniality, and efficiency of Ms. Parhat, our capable associate director, and Mr. Enrico, our tireless program coordinator. Welcome to you all. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Mr. Moghadam, for saying a few words.
Apple comes through again. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you, and welcome to Stanford. Every time a Nobel laureate visits Stanford, Particularly as a guest of the Iranian Studies Program, it's a cherished moment. But a visit by the first Iranian woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first woman to be a judge in Iran, at this moment in history is particularly significant and noteworthy. Iran is experiencing a critical moment in its long history, a movement led by women and under the now universally recognized name of Mahsa Amini and the slogan of Women, Life, Freedom. Many observers have been surprised at what they see as the sudden explosion of such a vast, mature, and women-led movement. But this shouldn't be a surprise. The Iranian Studies Program at Stanford has held more than a dozen events with Iranian women as part of a series of discussions on their movement in Iran. Women from all political persuasions talking about their struggle for equality and democracy. Tonight's celebration is, in a sense, a continuation of these conversations. Even a cursory look at the life of Shirin Ebadi offers ample clues of why today's movement should not be a surprise, but considered a natural continuation of the relentless struggle of iconic figures like Ms. Ebadi. For more than half a century, Shirin Ebadi has been the icon for the struggle of women in Iran, demanding a more equitable place in society, particularly in front of the judiciary. She's been fearless in her willingness to defend some of the most politically charged cases, and then in the court of public opinion, of gross abuse of justice, of lawyers, and of prisoners of conscience. She has defiantly faced the wrath of the regime, even as a Nobel laureate, and has never relented in her struggle for justice, for democracy, and for the rule of law. From the time she first visited Stanford, right after she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2003, until today, Shirin Ebadi has used her stature as a laureate, as the voice of the voices, a dedicated advocate for democracy, and a fearless fighter for the cause of women. Her words are always measured, sober, and serious. For the last 3 years, she's been tireless in exposing egregious behavior of the regime towards its critics, particularly women, and trying to convince the international community that a new Iran is not just possible, but it's a necessity. She was a pioneer in trying to get FIFA, speaking of the World Cup, to pressure the Iranian regime to end gender apartheid when it came to women attending live soccer games in Iran, which of course was banned. I had the good fortune of writing an op-ed with Dr. Milani and Ms. Ebadi demanding the action from FIFA on this topic. In short, Shirin Ebadi, along with other women activists like Nasrin Sotoudeh and Narges Mohammadi, are beacons of hope for a secular, democratic Iran. With that, let me just get out of the way and let you enjoy the snippets of the movie. I'm really excited to see it. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Debra Satz. I'm the Dean of the School of Humanities and Sciences at Stanford, and I'm also the Martin Sutton Weeks Professor of Philosophy and a specialist in ethics. It's an honor to be here and to be able to make some brief remarks on behalf of the school. And I want to just start with giving some thanks. First, to Shirin Ebadi for your important work, for your bravery, for your lifelong advocacy for Iranian women and children. Next, to Iranian Studies and to FSI for co-sponsoring this event. And finally, to Hamid and Christina Moghadam for their foundational support for Iranian studies here at Stanford. the most powerful language we have for expressing humanity's claims, the claims that each of us has, regardless of our nationality, race, sex, social class, or religion, is the language of human rights. While it's sometimes contended that human rights is a European idea, or more pointedly, a colonial idea, struggles for human rights occur across the globe, and these struggles know no boundaries. Moreover, every one of the world's great religions and traditions has elements that sound the song of human rights in different registers. Consider this poem by Sadi, a luminary of 13th century Iranian literature. And I took a translation off the web, so I hope it's the best translation. Human beings are body parts of each other. In creation, they are indeed of one essence. If a body part is inflicted with pain, other body parts uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you shall not retain. So this poem really powerfully expresses the idea that we are a common humanity and that the stranger's suffering is also of concern to me. And that's, as I say, a 13th century idea in Iran. Universities, well, as we know, the struggle for human rights is ongoing in today's Iran. A powerful wave of protest shows the world once again the resilience of a people fighting against authoritarian government and against the oppression of women. From street demonstrations to songs and dance and poetry and film, women, along with workers and students, are advancing a legacy of struggle against authoritarianism in Iran. And women have played a leading role here, upending a lot of stereotypes about social movements and about women in the Middle East. Universities like Stanford have a special obligation to educate students and the public and to advance our understanding of all aspects of our world. One of the central pillars of that obligation is exposing our students to different cultures and histories than their own, and of course, sometimes exposing them to their own cultures and histories, which they may not fully understand. That's why globalizing our curriculum has been such an important priority to the School of Humanities and Sciences, and why the program in Iranian Studies is so important. A second pillar for us of our obligation is instilling in our students a sense of their civic obligations, their responsibilities as members of communities, small communities like Stanford, relatively small, of their own countries, and as fellow travelers, at least for a time, on this troubled but beautiful world. Instilling civic responsibility isn't just a matter of rote knowledge transfer. You don't become a good citizen just by reading about citizenship. It involves confronting current forms of injustice at home and abroad, seeing yourself in others, feeling the pain of others, listening to others, learning about things that are new and different, and sometimes engaging in discussions that stretch your sense of what is possible. Tonight's event is one way we materialize our educational and our civic responsibilities. Shirin Ebadi is one of the most remarkable human rights advocates of our time, and we're all very fortunate to have the opportunity here to learn from her. Thanks.
As we announced earlier, thank you very much, As we announced, there are mics here, and those who want to ask questions, please go to the mic. There's a mic back there as well, and we shall call on you. You can ask your questions in English or Persian. She will be answering in Persian, and I will be translating for her. Stand.
خانم عبادی، در همین لحظه که ما اینجا دوستان کنار هم دیگه جمع شدیم، هموطنامون توی ایران من جمله کودکان به فجیع‌ترین وضع ممکن کشته میشن. به دختران و زنان جوان تجاوز میشه. بیش از 60 روز از انقلابی که رهبرش فقط و فقط خود مردم هستن گذشته و جمهوری اسلامی مسئولیت هیچ کدوم از جنایت‌هاشو علی‌رغم واکنش‌های جامعه بین الملل بر عهده نگرفته و تحریم‌ها علیه ایران بیشتر جنبه سمبولیک و نمادین دارن. شما به عنوان یک زن، کسی که سالها طرفدار حقوق بشر بودین، به عنوان اولین زن برنده جایزه نوبل تو ایران، فکر می‌کنین آیا این انقلاب بدون رهبر میتونه به سرانجام برسه؟ فکر می‌کنید چقدر دیگه باید قربانی بدیم تا کافی باشه برای جامعه بین الملل تا راهبردی غیر از ابراز تأسف برای ایران داشته باشن، به غیر از ابراز امیدواری صرفاً برای ایران چه کاری فکر میکنین میتونیم انجام بدیم؟ مرسی.
اجازه بدید ترجمه کنم سوال رو بعد لطفاً. As we sit here and peacefully talk about these events, children are being killed in Iran, women are being assaulted, are being raped. There is no reckoning. The Iranian leadership accepts no responsibility. The pressures, international pressures on Iran are merely symbolic, even the sanctions. As the first woman who has won the Nobel Prize, how long do you think this revolution can continue without a leadership? What do we need to do in order to convince the West that they should do something more than simply showing sympathy? What do we need to achieve victory?
قسمت اول سوال شما که ناظر بود به اینکه ما می توانیم بدون رهبر پیروز بشویم یا خیر، باید بگم که دوران داشتن یک رهبر واحد گذشته. اون دفعه که رهبرم داشتیم چه تاج گلی سرمون زدیم، حالا دنبال رهبر میگردیم. ادامه بدم به ترجمه.
اجازه ترجمه. About the part of your question regarding leadership, I think we can, in fact, continue without a single leadership. I think the days for one charismatic leader, one solitary leader has passed. Furthermore, the last time we had one of these charismatic leaders, what the hell did we gain?
اما این انقلاب بدون رهبرم نیست. رهبرانی دارد. ببینید وقتی که جوانان محلات تو هر محله‌ای تعدادی از جوانان جمع میشن و با همدیگه در ارتباطن، اعلامیه میدن، همه میان بیرون. یا وقتی که خارج از ایران فرزند خانواده قربانیان پرواز اوکراین بیانیه میدن، ببینید سر تا سر جهان هر جا که یه ایرانی هست صدایی بلند میشه. اینا چی هن؟ اینا رهبرا، گروه های مختلف رهبری هستند و هر چقدر این انقلاب طولانی تر بشه از جهت پیدا کردن رهبران واقعی بهتره. برای اینکه رهبران واقعی حین مبارزات مردمی هستند که میان بالا. رهبری که از قبل تعیین شده باشه که بخواد دستور بده، اون آخرش دیکتاتوره.
Furthermore, I don't think this revolution is without leaders. It has many leaders. When students in a neighborhood organize and issue a proclamation and everyone comes out to demonstrate, that is leadership. When families of those killed in the gunning down of the Ukrainian flight make an announcement and ask, every Iranian from every corner of the world comes out in the streets. These are different leaders. These are different groups that have leadership position. The longer this movement goes, the more capable and elected leadership will emerge. Those who have predetermined themselves as leaders will emerge only as dictators.
و سالها و سالها بوی نفت اجازه نداد که دولت‌های و مردم غرب بوی خون رو در ایران بشنوند. نادیده گرفتن آنچه که بر ما گذشت. اما الان به لطف جوانان مبارزی که در داخل هستند صدای انقلاب آنچنان رفته بالا که حتی گوش‌های کر حکومت‌های غربی هم دیگه مجبور بشنوه. حالا مجبورشون کردیم که ببینید این حکومت 43 ساله با مردم چه رفتاری کردن. حالا دیگه مجبورن. الان آغاز شنیدن صدای ماست. بگذاریم از گذشته ها که چشم بستن بر صدها بیگناهی که کشته شد. حالا مجبورن چشمشون رو باز کنن و ببینن در خواب غفلتی که اونا فرو رفتن این رژیم حتی چطور تهدیدی شده برای خودشون. فردا اگر مسئله انرژی هسته‌ای رو ببندن، امضا بکنن یا نکنن، هر چی، دولت ایران کار خودش میکنه. الان فوردور قنات‌سازی 60% شروع کردن. خود حکومت میگه، یعنی تا اینجاش اعتراف کرده. حالا یه چیزایی هم زیر میز داره، برای اینکه ما حکومتی که میشناسیم خودمون، اون حالا ببینید زیر میزاش چه چیزای خطرناکی برای همین حکومت‌هایی که کور بودن سالها جنایات این رژیم رو تو آستین دارن. حالا میفهمن صدای مردم کجاست و این آغاز پیروزی مردم ایرانه. به همین دلیل ما پیروز بشیم. صدامون انقدر بلند شده که به گوش همه رسیده.
For many, many years, the smell of oil, unfortunately, did not allow Western powers to smell the blood of Iranians. They ignored the atrocities of this regime. But now, today, because of the defiant struggles of the Iranian youth, the deaf powers of the West no longer have any choice but to hear the voice of the people. This is the beginning of our voices being heard. This is the beginning of an end of their period of muteness. This is the beginning of their recognition that they have been in a slumber and many of the regime's atrocities has been forced on them as well. It doesn't matter what they will do with the nuclear deal tomorrow. The regime will do its own shenanigans. It has already started enriching uranium at Fardu, and it itself claims that they are now enriching uranium at 60%. I would be not surprised if they have other dangerous surprises. The West is now beginning to recognize that it has been fooled. The voice of our people is being heard. It is our voice that is going to become stronger every day and force the West to recognize the necessity and the need for democracy.
خانم عبادی, sooner or later, this brutal regime will be overthrown. And we have to be prepared for a democratic government. one of the most important notions of a democracy is the constitution. What do you think about the Iranian constitution? Is there any qualified group of lawmakers that are working on the constitutions these days? I am sure we do not want to postpone this important topic until after the victory. Thank you.
گفتن که سوالش این بود که دیر یا زود این رژیم سرنگون خواهد شد و ما باید آماده دموکراسی باشیم و یکی از ملزومات این دموکراسی یک قانون اساسی دموکراتیکه. آیا شما از تلاش‌هایی از طرف گروه‌های صاحب نظر، گروه‌های حقوقدان برای تدوین قانون اساسی برای یک دولت دموکراتیک آگاهید؟ آیا فکر نمی‌کنید این تلاش باید شروع بشه یا نه؟
ببینید قانون اساسی رو که حقوقدانا نمی‌نویسن، نمایندگان منتخب مردم با کمک از حقوقدانان می‌نویسند. ولی نوشتن قانون اساسی خیلی راحته. من میتونم 48 ساعت تو اتاق بشینم، در رو خودم ببندم، یه قانون اساسی کاملا بدم بیرون، اما اون فقط به درد خودم میخوره. قانون اساسی باید مورد تایید نمایندگان مردم باشه.
Constitution is not written, should not be written by lawyers or jurists. It should be written by the elected representatives of the people in consultation with jurists. It isn't difficult to write a constitution. I can close the door, go inside the room, and in 48 hours produce a constitution. But that constitution won't be worth much. I won't exactly say what she said, but you can guess.
سلام خانم دکتر عبادی، شما سمبل آزادی هستین برای ما زنان ایرانی. خیلی برای شما احترام داریم. من مانی اردلان فرادی هستم، نتیجه علی اکبر داور وزیر عدالت. شما با خواهرم داور اردلان مصاحبه داشتین وقتی در نروژ مدال نوبل دریافت کردین. خیلی به شما سلام دارم. من در استنفورد کار میکنم. میخواستم یه سوال بپرسم راجع به اگه اشکال نداره به انگلیسی. We wonder if the protest could trigger the UN Security Council to take Iran to the International Criminal Court, particularly for Kurd and Baluch genocide. We are Kurdish. And I wanted to ask, because Iran is not party to the Rome Statute Treaty, the court investigation has to be initiated by the Security Council, whereas if it was a party to the treaty, another country could take Iran to the court. What is your opinion on whether that's possible?
She said you are the icon of Iranian women and the fight for freedom. I have a great deal of respect for you. I am the granddaughter of Ali Akbar Davar. For those of you who don't know, Ali Akbar Davar is essentially the founder of a secular judiciary in Iran. During the
Great-granddaughter.
Huh?
Great-granddaughter.
ما تخفیف دادیم یک جا. حالا شما چونه نزنین دیگه. And you have met my sister so the question that she has is, do you think that these demonstrations could eventually lead آیا اینقدر چونه زدم ما رو گیر کردیم. آیا این تظاهرات، گفتم ما کرد هستیم، آیا این تظاهرات و کشتارهایی که در کردستان شده و کشتارهایی که در بلوچستان شده ممکنه که سازمان ملل رو به جایی بکشونه که دولت جمهوری اسلامی رو به دادگاه جنایی بکشونن؟ ایران اون روم استاتوت رو امضا نکرده، ولی کشور دیگری میتونه شکایت بکنه و از اون طریق آیا فکر میکنید امکان چنین کاری هست یا نه؟ درست شد بالاخره؟
ببینید بستگی داره به تعادل قوا در شورای امنیت، چون این مسئله اگر بخواد اتفاق بیفته بالاخره باید از مجرای شورای امنیت عبور کنه. این همه باجی که طی این همه سال جمهوری اسلامی به چین و روسیه داده و اینطوری منافع ایران رو به تاراج گذاشتن، برای همین روزا بوده. در نتیجه من علاقه دارم پامو بزنم رو زمین و راه برم و یه حرفی نگم که ظاهرش خوب باشه، بگم بله انشالله قبول میکنن. نه، من در شرایط فعلی به هیچ وجه نمیبینم که چنین شانسی باشه که از طریق چین یا روسیه موافقت بکنن که ایران رو بفرستن دادگاه. اما خب راه های دیگه هست که بشود عدالت رو اجرا کرد. نمونهش رو شما در مورد دادگاه نوری در سوئد دیدید. حالا یک اصل دیگری تقریبا در اکثر کشورهای متمدن قبول شده به نام اصل صلاحیت جهانی. یعنی اگر کسی که مرتکب اعمالی بشود که وجدان بشری رو آزرده میکنه، مثل شکنجه، مثل کارهایی که اینا توی زاهدان کردن یا توی کردستان کردن که مثال زدید، اگر در کشوری که گیر بیفتن که معتقد به این اصل صلاحیت جهانی هستن که تکرار میکنم روز به روزم بیشتر میشه تعداد این کشورها، اون موقع پای میز محاکمه راحت میشه اینا رو کشون. چنانکه یه دونه‌شو کشوندیم، حالا انشالله سر دراز داره، بازم بقیه رو میگیریم
انشالله.
Whether the regime will be referred to the court depends on the balance of forces in the Security Council. And I personally don't see this as a possibility that the Security Council will refer to Iran to the court. All the concessions that Iran has in the past years made to China and Russia, and all the compromises of Iran's national interest that has been made in this process has been precisely for this moment, for these kinds of moments. I like to be pragmatic. I like to be realistic. I don't like to be too optimistic. I don't see under the current circumstances that China or Russia will agree to send Iran to the court. But there are other ways of having a judicial reckoning. Some of you know that the case of Nouri in Sweden. Nouri was one of these criminals who killed, was partially responsible for the death of about 4,000 people and is now being condemned in Switzerland. There is now increasing acceptance internationally for a new concept in law called universal sovereignty. If someone commits a crime that is injurious to the common consciousness of humanity, like torture, for example, or like what this regime has done in Kurdistan, then in the countries that abide by this rule, and the number of those countries is increasing, then if one of these criminals comes to those countries, that country can take that person to court. This is just the beginning, and I think there is a long road ahead, but I see a lot of possibilities in that direction.
شبتون بخیر خانم دکتر. 2 سوال کوتاه. توی این فیلم گفتن که Flight 752 was mistakenly shot down. آیا independent investigation انجام شده که determine کنه که این داستان میستیک بوده؟ تا اونجا که ما میدونیم هنوز کاملا مشخص نشده که the downing of that flight was mistaken or intentional. سوال دومم این که شما توی این فیلم فرمودین که مشکل حقوق زنان در ایران مشکل دین و مذهب نیست، ولی مشکل مرد سالاری فرهنگمونه. اگه میشه کمک کنید قانعمون کنید که چرا مذهب رو کنار میذاریم. دینی که توی قرآنش داره میگه مرد 2 برابر یه زن ارزش داره در مرث و میراث و اینکه اگه به یه جای حمله کنی میتونی زنها رو بچه‌ها رو به عنوان غنیمت بگیری، چرا خجالت بکشیم از اینکه راجع به این قضیه صحبت کنیم و کریتیسایزش کنیم؟ مرسی.
سوال بسیار بسیار درست
اجازه میدید ترجمهش کنم؟ ببخشید معذرت می‌خوام. حالا من شما رو هم گوش کردم. Two brief questions. In the film, it is you indicate that the downing of the Ukrainian flight was by mistake. As far as I understand, there has been no definitive decision. There is likely that the downing of that was intentional. Some of you would know we had Mr. Hamid Moghadam here about a month ago, and he is very much of the opinion that it was very much a decided effort to shut down that plane for reasons that are complicated. Anyway, second, in the film you say that we must separate the question of women's right from religion, and that it is rooted in patriarchy and culture. Why shouldn't we criticize religion? Why shouldn't we criticize a religion wherein in its official religious text in the Quran, it says a woman takes twice as much of an inheritance, where it allows half, a man takes twice. I apologize. When it says women and children can be taken as slaves, why can't we make clear that we have these kinds of criticisms?
سوال بسیار خوبی است. اون چی که همیشه باعث ستم به مردم میشه این است که مذهب یا ایدئولوژی، یعنی چه مذهبی چه ایدئولوژیکی، به قدرت میرسه و اون موقع است که در اون چارچوبی که خودش داره میخواد بابای مردم در بیاره. و الا هر کس توی خونه خودش هر مذهبی رو میتونه داشته باشه. پس بنابراین مشکل رو در جای دیگری باید ببینیم. مشکل در استبداد دینیه که این استبداد دینی قبل از رنسانس هم در مورد حکومت کلیسا شما دیدید. مسیحی هم بودن، بابای مردم هم در آوردن. اما الان مردم کلیسای خودشون میرن، زندگی خودشون هم میکنن. یکی هم نخواست کلیسا نمیره، به کسی هم ارتباطی نداره. این اتفاق باید در اسلام هم بیفته، در جهان اسلام بیفته. کاملا مذهب باید از حکومت ها جدا بشه. مبنای قدرت سیاسی فقط مردمن و نه مذهب یا ایدئولوژی. یک. دوم، اگر عامل بدبختی و عامل استبداد فقط مذهب اسلامه، اون وقت من شما رو یادآور میشم به کشورهایی که مسلمان هم نیستن و چطوری مردم زندگی میکنن، من جمله کره شمالی، من جمله چین. اینا که مسلمان هم نیستن. آیا دموکراسی دارن؟ ندارن. اما اینا هم بدن، برای اینکه ایدئولوژی با حکومت قاطی شده. مشکل ما اینجاست که این مذهبمون با حکومتمون یکی شده و بعد حکومت کلید بهشت گذاشته تو جیبش، همه هم بازور میخواد داخل بهشت بکنه. اینو بهش میگن استبداد دینی. آقا یکی میخواد بره جهنم ولش کنین نمیشه باید بری بهش این مشکل
منم میخوام برم جهنم. This is a very good question. What causes distress to people is when religion and or ideology comes to power. If you allow people to exercise their religion in their private domain, each can go their own way, and each cannot, and religion cannot become force to force against others. The problem that we have in Iran is religious despotism. Religious despotism becomes a problem even when their religion is Christian. If you look at Europe before the Renaissance, you can see what Christians were doing to their own people and were doing to others. But now we have a different reality in the West. People can decide to go to church if they want to, but they can also live their own life. This is what has to happen in the Islamic world. Religion has to be separated from the state. It has to be accepted that the sole basis of power are the people, not the religious people, not religion. If Islam was the only cause of misery, why is there so much despotism and so much failure of democracy in places like China and North Korea? Neither of them have democracy. In both cases, the problem is that religion has become intermixed with authority. In our case, in Iran, religion has become the tool of the state, and the state has further claimed that it has the key to heaven, and it is keeping it there and giving it, forcing it on people. We want to say to the regime, what if I don't want to go to heaven? I must have the right to do that. And of course, you don't have the right in Iran.
Thank you. I would like to start with thanking Professor Milani and Dr. Ebadi on behalf of our compatriot Iranians in Iran and audience here for setting up this venue. My quest has three parts, one comment and two questions. I beg your answer. First of all, I agree that in the past, at least last 50 years, we had very ineffective leadership. And considering also, the dynamics of our social and historical, facts, it worries me that just anticipating, this movement, grassroots movements that is going against a very central, brutal government with all facades and tools, and just grassroots and mostly unformed movement, we are going against this monster. So I strongly disagree that we can win this battle without any dominant leader, not alone, singular. So this is my comment. My question is that, considering that the first phase that forming the narrative, which beautifully by the kids in Iran done, and it has a great cohesion and content, but it's likely that this can disintegrate and without good leadership dissipate again in the problems that has been there. So the question here is that what do you think the main lines of leadership are coming up that would serve to the benefits of this in a very cohesive and again conclusive way, considering that we have had problems in the past and internal and also geopolitics that going around Iran, and the forces aren't encouraging and in supporting, let's say, singular Iran. What lines of leadership you are seeing that are coming up and they will be helpful to the movement, and what weaknesses and problems you see that they are ahead of us? I thank you for your answers.
خیلی تشکر کردن از اینکه تشریف آوردید. گفتن که با اون قسمتی که فرمودید ما بدون رهبری میتونیم به موفقیت برسیم موافق نیستن. فکر میکنن رژیم با قدرت کامل و با خشونت کامل در مقابله با مردم هست و احتیاجی به یک رهبری منسجم داره. سوالشون این است که جوانها در ایران تونستن یک جریان به هم پیوسته، یک قدرت به هم پیوسته ایجاد بکنن، ولی با در نظر گرفتن تجربه تاریخ، با در نظر گرفتن اینکه کشورهایی در منطقه هستن، نیروهایی در منطقه هستن که تمامیت ارضی ایران رو به خطر میاندازن و خواستار تمامیت ارضی ایران نیستن، چه خصوصیاتی رهبری مورد نظر شما، رهبری که بتونه این گذار رو انجام بده، باید داشته باشه؟ چه خطراتی چنین رهبری رو تهدید میکنه و چه نقاط قدرتی باید داشته باشه؟
باید بگم یکی از پروپاگاندا و حرفای نادرست حکومت این است که میخوان ایران رو تجزیه بکنن، اقوام کردها میخوان جدا شن. باور نکنید، اقوام ما قصد جدایی ندارن، این فقط برای فریب مردم زده میشه. اما خصوصیات رهبری چه باید باشد؟ در درجه اول به فکر منافع ملی باشه. این مهمترین عاملی است که به نظر من یه رهبر داره. و بعدم مورد قبول مردم باشه. یه بار که شما امتحان کردید یه رهبری داشتیم، گذاشتیم رو سرمون آوردیمش، چه بلایی سرمون آورد. حالا من نمیدونم چرا باید دنبال رهبر بگردیم و چرا فکر نمی‌کنیم اگر یک انتخابات آزاد داشته باشیم مردم میتونن نمایندگانشون رو انتخاب بکنن. همونطوری که میبینید تا الان بیش از 2 ماهه که مردم چطور مرتب میان توی خیابون. شما یادتونه کارگران نیشکر 7 تپه چطور متحد و بسیار حساب شده اعتصاب کردند و در محدوده ایران به خواست خودشون هم رسیدن، کارخونه رو از دست اون مالکش پس گرفتن. یک بخش دیگری از خواستشون مونده بود که بایستی شورایی اداره بشه. خب اون یه بخش هنوز نرسیدن بهش، اما خواهند رسید. این یه نمونه کوچکه. بقیه کشور هم میتونه همینطور باشه. چرا فکر میکنیم ما احتیاج به قیم داریم؟ یه افرادی باید بیان حتما از قبل تعیین شده به ما بگن از این راه برو یا از اون راه نرو. نه، میتونیم خودمون شانس اینو داشته باشیم که انتخاب بکنیم. البته دوران گذار یعنی فاصله سقوط رژیم تا استقرار یک رژیم جدید یک فاصله میفته. این فاصله رو بهش میگن دوران گذار. دوران گذار خیلی اهمیت داره. در دوران گذار عده‌ای از افراد شناخته شده و مورد اعتماد بایستی دست جمعی با هم کار کنن که این دوران خطرناک رو سپری کنن. اما وقتی که پای این رسید که صندوق رأی رو بیارن وسط و مردم رأی بدن، مسلم بدانید اون موقع رهبران خوبی انتخاب میشن.
Let me begin by saying that I think this is regime propaganda, that there are people who want to break up Iran. that some of the ethnic minorities are secessionists. I don't believe that they are. I think they say these things in order to fool the people. As to what qualities leaders should have, I think the first and foremost is that they must have national interest in mind. To me, that's the most important. The second is that they must be accepted by the people. Once we chose one unitary leader and we brought him to power, you saw what miseries he brought upon us. We must have free elections where people will choose their leaders. Look at the events in Iran. For 2 months now, people keep coming to the streets without any apparent leadership. Some of you might remember the workers of the factory, کارگران هفت تپه نیشکر. They united and they organized the strike. And they essentially achieved what they wanted. They wanted two things. They wanted to take back the ownership from the person that had claimed the factory. And they wanted to have a collective leadership in the factory. They did not achieve their second goal, but the first goal they achieved. This is a small example, but for the rest of the country, the same can be achieved. We do not need a guardian. We do not need a savior to lead us. We can go through the process of picking our own leaders. But there is a period of danger. There is a period of transition. A period of transition from the moment this regime falls till the moment that that election can pick people's chosen leaders. It is, in my view, very important that in this period, people who are known, who have credibility, who have reputation, who are believed, whose integrity is believed by the people, come together and manage this period, this dangerous period of transition. Once the election process begins, once this dangerous period is behind us, I'm convinced that people will pick the right leadership.
با درود خانم عبادی. اتفاقا سوال منم در همین زمین است، در همین دوران ترانزیشنه، در همین دوران گذاره، در همینجا خیلی از ما الان امشب که هستیم می‌خواستیم واقعا بفهمیم و به نظر شما رو راجع به همین اشخاصی که در این دوران گذار میتونن کمک بکنن و دارن کار میکنن. رضا پهلوی نمیدونم حالا چقدر معتقدیم که طرفدار داره. آقای اسماعیلیون دیدیم کاراشو. خانم مسیح علی نژاد داره پرپر میزنه، هر روز دارن باهاش مصاحبه میکنن. نازنین بنیاد، خود شما چرا یه ائتلافی، یک گروه ائتلافی، یک ترانزیشن گروه الان تشکیل نمیدین؟ نظرتون راجع به این جریان چیه؟ دومی که در سخنرانیاتون این ور شنیدم که شما میگفتین بعد این رژیم یا افراد این رژیم رسیدن به یک بن‌بستی که نباید تو این بن‌بست بمونن. تو این بن‌بست بمونن خیلی خطرناک میشه. یک راهی بعد باشه برای سری از اینها که بتونن جایی باشه، جایی بذاریم که بتونن برگردن. روی این موضوع لطفاً خود بیشتر صحبت بکنیم. کسایی که مثلا میشنویم یک سرداری الان برگشته مثلا به ملت میخواد کار بکنه، یک راهی بذاریم برای اینا.
The question that I have is actually about this period of transition. There are many people who have been very active in the recent months and trying to take up the mantle of leadership. Reza Pahlavi is one of them. Hamid Ismailion is another one. Masih Ali Nejad is constantly talking about the women's struggle. Nazanin Bunyadi, you yourself. Why do you think this kind of a group cannot create a coalition to manage this period of transition? Second, in one of your talks, you talked about how we must leave a space for some of the people who work in the regime to have an option to join. You said we don't want to corner them. Please explain who are these kinds of people and how can we allow them to join the movement.
صدا اکو داشتون بخش دوم سوالش من
بخش دومش این بود که شما در یکی از سخنرانیاتون گفته بودید که نباید همه اعضای رژیم رو در یک بنبست قرار داد که راه پس و پیشی نداشته باشن، باید یک راهی براشون ایجاد کرد که بتونن بپیوندن، متنبه بشن.
ببینید ائتلاف برای دوران گذار البته خوبه. بالاخره یک فاصله ای که افتاده و برای اینکه هرج و مرج پیش نیاد یه عده بعد بشینن یه تصمیماتی بگیرن که مورد قبول اکثریت جامعه باشه. اما دو مسئله است. اولا از کجا میدونید چنین اعترافی صورت نگرفته؟ مگر حتما بایستی در پشت تلویزیون همه بیان بگوین که حسن و حسین و تقی و نقی دور هم جمع شدن حالا ما میخوایم این کار رو بکنیم؟ نه. شما مثلا میدونید جوانان محلات توی هر شهری در ایران هست کیا هستن؟ نمیدونیم که، اما هستن و میبینید که دارن کار میکنن. ائتلاف هم به همین صورته. اون افرادی که میان اعلام میکنن آقا مژده چه ائتلافی کردیم ما 6 نفر دور هم جمع شدیم، اونا هیاهوه. ائتلاف واقعی دارن کارشونه میکنن بدونی که لازم باشه اسمشون هم همه جا بره. نه، همونطوری که شما دلتون برای ایران شور میزنه تک تک مردم ایران هم همین نگرانی ها رو دارن. و از اون طرف برای اینکه عبور از این رژیم فاسد کم هزینه بشه بایستی حدالامکان کاری کنیم که ریزش نیرو از سوی حکومت بیشتر باشه. هر چقدر طرفداراشون کمتر بشه، هر چقدر اختلافشون بیشتر بشه به نفع مردم ایرانه. خب برای این کار راه‌های متعدد و ابتکارات گوناگونی هر حزب و گروه و دسته‌ای میتونه داشته باشه. چیزی که من خودم توصیه میکنم این است که شرمسار کنید، خجلت زده بکنیم که ببین اینی که کشتی برادرت بود، همسایت بود، آشنات بود، واسه چه رژیمی داری آدم میکشی؟ یه لقمه نون جلوی شماها پرت کردن خودشون دارن مملکت میچابن، واسه اون حکومت داری آدم میکشی؟ یه مقدار ایجاد شرمساری. حالا یه اکتیویست دیگه ممکنه راه حل خودش رو داشته باشه. به تعداد افرادی که دارن فعالیت میکنن راه حل هم هست، اما به این فکر کنیم که دائما اون طرف بایستی ضعیفتر بشه برای اینکه کمتر بتونه بکشه. و خوشبختانه شروع شده. همونطوری که گفتید یکی و دوتا هم نیستن، بیشتره و بیشتر هم میشه. شرمسارشون کنیم که ببینید چه به روز مردم آوردید. زناشون رو بندازی به جونشون. یعنی چی؟ اینا هم زنش هم صبح به صبح میره خرید میکنه، بچهش هم میره مدرسه. میدونید اینا رو بایستی لای منگنه اخلاق قرار داد. آقا ببین چه شرایطی ایجاد شده، حداقل بیا بیرون. و حتما یه خاطره دردناک رو امروز خوندیم توی اخبار. وقتی که تیم ایران در بازی آمریکا باخت، یکی از بازیکن‌ها دیدین که نشست گریه کرد و خب همون بازیکن دوست صمیمیش تو شهرش آمده بود بیرون شادی میکرد که خب برای اینکه به هر حال همه اون لحظه شاد بودن بنا به دلایل خودشون، زدن کشتنش. حالا اون بازیکن که با اون به هر حال رفت بازی بکنه، برای علیرغم این که مردم گفته بودن بازی نکن، رفت بازی بکنه، دفعه دیگه حاضر همون کارو بکنه؟ هر دفعه یاد دوستش نمیافته که به وسیله همین رژیم کشته شد. الان همه یه جمله هست میگن نونت رو در خون مردم نزن. این خیلی جمله تکان دهنده ایه. باید اینا رو شرمسار کرد. نونی که سر سفره یه زن و بچت میبری، این آغشته به خون هموطنته. نکن. راه حل‌های دیگری هم داره. این چیزیست که من شخصا میپسندم.
The idea of coalition is, of course, for the period of transition, a very good idea. I have nothing against it. In order to lessen the chaos in that period of transition, it is very much a good idea to have a group of people whose ideas, whose decisions are accepted by the people, who can come together and make those decisions. But a couple of points. Why do you think such a coalition hasn't been made yet? The real coalition are the ones who you do not necessarily hear about. Why do you not think that the youth who come out in the neighborhoods every night have not de facto created this coalition? Secondly, those who, with great fanfare, announced that the 5 or 6 of them have created a new coalition, they are usually not doing anything serious. I don't think that people take them that seriously. Why don't you think that the people of Iran are as concerned about their future as you and I are here? In my view, the best way to make this transition least bloody and least costly is to help lessen the powers of the regime and lessen their base of support. The more we can weaken them, the more we can convince their forces to join the other side, the more we can make this transition less bloody. There are many ways to get this done. There are many different people who are trying to do exactly what I'm saying. What I prefer to do is to shame them. We have to shame them. We have to tell them, you are killing your brother, your neighbor. For whom? For this regime that is giving you a pittance and forcing you to engage in these criminal acts. There are many different ways to convince them of the bankruptcy of the regimes. We need to weaken the other side. Anything that helps us weaken the other side is, in my view, the right way. One of the ways that we can do this is convince their wives, their sisters, to join this. I think this process has begun. It isn't just 1 or 2 who are ashamed by their children, who are ashamed by their wives, who go out and realize that their husband has engaged in these criminal acts. I'm sure you have heard the story that came out today. As you know, the Iran soccer team lost, and one of the players was weeping on the pitch. His friend back home, someone with whom he played, was amongst those people who took to the street to celebrate the defeat of the Iranian team. One friend played for the team, the other person went to the street to celebrate the defeat of this team. The regime shot that young man. And when word gets to this player, do you think the next time he will go and with that much ease play for this regime? One of the slogans that has been extremely effective in the last few months, he says, "Don't dip your bread in the blood of your people." That is a remarkable sentence. We need to make this, make them understand that dipping their bread in the blood of their people is not the right path. My preference is to shame them through this process.
اجازه میفهمید دوستان اگر موافقت بکنید چون وقت دیگه نزدیک به اتمامه اولا کسی به سوال کنندگان اضافه نشه سوالاتون رو کوتاه بکنید منم قول میدم کوتاه جواب بدم که به همه برسه ضمناً آقای دکترم خیلی خسته شدن
She asked no one else to join the line of questions. She said that please ask brief questions and she will make brief answers.
I promise.
Yes.
خب
سلام خانم دکتر من سریع میگم کوشنم هم نصفش میکنم ما جزو یه سری گروه هستیم که الان 13 هفته است که حدود کسایی که توی بیریا هستن هر هفته شنبه ها تظاهرات میکنیم حدود بین 4,000 نفر تا 7,000 نفر میان و شعار میدیم و این هفته در اوکلند هستیم به هیچ گروهی هم وابسته نیستیم و پوزیشن این هفته‌مون هم راجع به زندانیان سیاسی هستش آزادی زندانیان سیاسی هست من سوالی که ازتون دارم اول از اون میخواستم دعوتتون کنم که بیاین و سکیوریتی ها همه چی هم قربونتونم میریم سکیوریتی هم براتون فراهم میکنیم ولی در کنار از این میخواستم بپرسم بگم واقعا ما به عنوان کسانی که توی بیریا زندگی میکنیم حدود 150,000 نفر ایرانی در بیریا وجود داره ما این تظاهرات رفتن پیاممون چی میتونه باشه و چطور میتونیم به این جنبش ایران کمک بکنیم خیلی ممنون
We are a group of Bay Area residents. It is now 13 weeks. Every week we go out to demonstrate. Between 3,000 to 5,000 people show up. This week our slogan is freeing of political prisoners. First of all, I want to ask you to come. We will provide full security if you come. But our my question to you is, what is it that we can do through these demonstrations to help the cause in Iran?
ممنون از دعوتتون کوتاه جواب بدم نمیتونم بیام چون سفر دارم و همونطوری که خودتونم انتخاب کردید آزادی زندانیان سیاسی خیلی خوبه و هر بار شاید یه شعار روز بدید از جمله میدونید یه عده‌ای از معترضین رو گرفتن براشون در آستانه صدور محاکمه هستن ممکن اعدامشون میکنن هفته دیگه شعارتون و خواستتون این باشه که اعدام نکنید هر هفته به یک مناسبت
I will be brief. I can't come because I'm traveling. Two, I think the freeing political prisoners is a very good slogan for this week. But my suggestion is that every week you pick a new slogan befitting the hour. For example, next week you should object to the court hearings that are ongoing. For several people, they are going to ask for them to be executed. You should demand an end to these executions.
شبتون بخیر. سپاس بی پایان از تمام تلاشتون برای حقوق بشر طی همه این سالها. نزدیکتر به مایک بعد. من از فعالان دانشجوی 88 هستم. خودم مهندسی میخوندم ولی برادرم حقوقدان بود. کلی بحث میکردیم راجع به پرونده هاتون. خیلی ممنون از زحماتتون. در یکی از مصاحبه‌های اخیرتون شما گفتین که شورای گذار باید بخشی از بدنه حاکمیت رو داخل خودش داشته باشه. اگه میشه شفاف سازی کنید که آیا هنوز به اصلاحات باور دارید؟ چون من ندارم.
ببینید
اجازه ترجمه
بله،
کنم. ببخشید معذرت میخوام. Began by thanking her for her tireless work. He said, I was a student. My brother was a law student. I was an engineering student when we talked about your cases when I was in Iran. In one of your recent talks, you indicated that this committee for the period of transition must include parts of the current regime. Could you explain what part, or do you still believe that parts of the regime could be and should be part of this coalition group?
یه بار هست که مردم شانس میارن مثل زمان شاه رفت و ارتش هم خودش رو تسلیم کرد. همه چی افتاد دست انقلابیون وقت. خب دوران گذارم همه رو خودشون گذاشتن. یه دفعه هست اینطوریه. خیلی خوب. شانس آوردیم. یه دفعه هست اینطوری نیست. تا لحظه آخر میخوان مقاومت بکنه. مثلا آفریقای جنوبی رو در نظر بگیرید. نشستن، توافق کردن، خیلی خوب ما حالا دیگه اسلحه ها رو میذاریم زمین، دوران گذار رو با هم طی میکنیم و نوع حکومت عوض میشه. در این صورت خیلی طبیعیه، خواه و ناخواه هر دو طرف باید بشینن حرف بزنن. ایدئال اینه که اون طرف 100% شکست بخوره بره کنار. اما اگر نخورد چی؟ مثل آفریقای جنوبی مجبورین بشینیم با هم حرف بزنیم. این جبر زمانه، نخواست من و شما.
گفتگو مسلما نیازه ولی اینکه در شورای گذار بخوان
همون شورای گذار
فکری کنن.
برای گفتگو نمیشینن که قربون صدقه هم برن. میشینن صحبت بکنن که چی کار بکنن کشورشون رو اداره بکنن. میگم یه نمونهش آفریقای جنوبی دیگه که همه ایرانی‌ها دائما اون رو مثال میزنن، همین کار کردن. یه نمونه دیگری اونی بود که در ایران بود. مردم شانس آوردن اون موقع، هیچ اتفاقی نیفتاد، شاه گذاشت رفت، ارتش هم تسلیم شد. همه چی شورای گذار خودشون تشکیل دادن با شورای انقلاب. شورای انقلاب یعنی دوران موقت. اما اگر اینطور نشد چی؟ شد مثل آفریقای جنوبی. طبیعتا هر دو طرف بایستی توافق بکنن، در یه چارچوبی توافق بکنن که چطور این رژیم بره و رژیم آینده بیاد. این یه چیز منطقیه، حرف من نیست، حرف منطقه، حرف زمانه، حرف سیاسته.
بله خیلی ممنون.
I have one small announcement to make. I apologize for people who are standing to ask questions. Time is up, running out. You're
going to like what I have to say. You're going to like what I have to say.
No. Just, I have
First of all, Persians, you are not alone. Okay. Every time in my life I needed help, Persians were there. I would not be alive without Persians. And so I'm here for you guys now. And Persians, you guys have friends. Use us. And my question is very simple. How do we stop a regime that is, how will Iranians overthrow a regime that isn't afraid to brutally murder them and have them outgunned?
I think we will have that as the last question. I apologize.
I think you like what I have to say too.
Okay, you be the last one. You say your question because Persians are known for their hospitality. We can't not give to our visitors. Please, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, good evening. My name is Dorian Monroe. I studied master's documentary film here at Stanford University. I'm currently working on a documentary looking at the current state of religion and ways in which it can and has been divisive. I've been exploring what's currently happening with the women of Iran and the hijab. My question is, what are your thoughts on that situation? And does it have anything to do with religion? And lastly, is there anyone here from your team that I could talk to about possibly setting up an interview at a later time? Thank you.
من الان عرض میکنم خلاصش عرض میکنم سوال ایشون her answer, let me be very brief, جواب شما رو خلاصه بدم. She said what I said about the period of transition is based on reality. This is the way transitions have happened. This is the way transition happened in South Africa. In South Africa, the opposition sat with members of the regime, and they decided on a path forward. If the regime, if the people don't have enough power to dislodge the regime, that kind of a transition happens. It has happened other places. In the case of the Shah's period, we were lucky. The Shah decided to leave, and this regime essentially managed the whole transition. So my hope is that we can arrive at the least bloody and least costly. So سوالای دو نفر ایشون گفتن که این خیلی گفتن که من زندگیمو مدیون ایرانی‌ها هستم. خیلی تشکر کردن. بعد گفتن که چطور میشه با یک رژیمی که تا دندان مسلحه و هیچ ابایی از کشتن مردمش نداره کنار اومد و اون رو کنار گذاشت. سوال ایشون این است که من دانشجوی فوق لیسانس فیلم مستندسازی در استنفورد هستم. دارم این فیلم مستند در مورد نقش مذهب میسازم. نظر شما در مورد حجاب چیه؟ و آیا میشه حجاب رو از دین جدا کرد؟ و بالاخره اینکه با کی تماس بگیرم که با شما مصاحبه بکنم؟
حجاب ارتباطی به دین نداره و خیلی از فقهای اسلام گفتن که اجباری نیست و آیه حجاب اساساً برای زنان پیغمبر آمده، نه برای تمام زنان. و میبینید که در قالب کشورهای اسلامی زنان حجاب ندارن و حجاب رو من بیشتر مبناش رو سنت میدونم، یعنی روش زندگی بوده. در مورد اینکه چطور با من تماس بگیرید، حالا اگه بگیم تماس نگیریم بهتره، نه؟ اما خب ایمیل بعد بزنید، من ایمیلم رو به شما بعدم میدم که هماهنگ کنیم. چشم.
So we're going to end with this because we have Mike McFaul who's going to close the event. I know he's tired. Everybody is tired. قبلا جواب داده بودن. She said hijab, in my view, has no relationship to religion. There are many scholars of Islam who have said there is no forced hijab. The parts of the Quran where there is a reference to hijab, according to these scholars, refers to only mandatory hijab for the wives of the Prophet. There is no universal. And there are also many countries, Islamic countries, where women are not forced to wear hijab. In my view, it is something that has arisen out of tradition and ways of life. As to the ways to contact me, I will make my email available to you and we can discuss.
یه سوال
این سوالی گفتم با این رژیم مسلح خونخوار چیکارش کنیم؟
بالاخره این رژیم هر چقدر که خونخوار باشه در مقابل اکثریت بالای 80% مردم که مخالفن یه موقعی مجبوره که قبول کنه و سقوط خواهد کرد. این تاریخ نشون داده هیچ دیکتاتوری تا ابد نمیتونه در قدرت بمونه. اینا هم سقوط میکنن.
That's a perfect way to end. The regime, as bloody as it is facing the opposition of more than 80% of the people. No dictatorial regime in history has been able to sustain itself when it has such an opposition. This dictatorship too shall end, I have no doubt. On that happy note, I ask Mike McFaul to come and say a few words to bring us home.
Let's just end on that note, please. Seriously. Well, let me be brief. You can't leave yet. Let me be brief. So I want to say two things. First, I want to thank Abbas, thank Christina Hamid for yet again an incredible event that we have here at Stanford University. I have been involved with all these people for about 2 decades. In fact, we met at Christina and Hamid's house 2 decades ago. By the way, I just want to say I have learned so much about Iran, Persian culture, your society, and I want to tell you a little anecdote. I had never met somebody who had won a Nobel Peace Prize until at your house. These days I've met a lot of them, but 20 years ago I'd never met any of them. So I was really worried about being late. And I drove up and the traffic was horrible. And I think the dinner was at 6 o'clock. And I walked in at 6:14 and I was sweating. Oh my goodness, I am late to meet Dr. Ebadi. And nobody was there. That's when I learned a little bit about Persian time. But, so thank you for enriching my life. Thank you for enriching Stanford's life, being here then and now today, and you're always welcome back. I want to say 2 things in closing, one analytic and one emotional. I study revolutions. I teach courses here on transitions and the fall of authoritarian regimes. I see Larry Diamond is here too. He does too. And one thing I want to say analytically is there are very few regimes in the world today that are as prone to collapse as the Islamic Republic, analytically, comparatively, over time. That's an analytic statement. Now, I also want to put us a challenge to you, Abbas, and me, and Larry, and everybody here at Stanford. This conversation about transitions is a very serious one. I'm glad you brought it up. And let's be honest, there are some transitions that fail and some that succeed. And I think it's a challenge to us as an academic community to study that. What went wrong in Russia, Zimbabwe, Egypt? What went wrong in 1978 in Iran? We should study that so that when that moment comes, you are prepared. And I want to take that on analytically as a challenge to Stanford University. But the second thing I want to say is emotional. There's a lot of rough regimes out there. Yours is not the only one. There's a lot of killing going on all over the world. And what always, if you just look at the depressing lines, it feels like democracy's in crisis and everybody's failing. But I feel very differently for 2 reasons. One, because we are all inspired by these incredibly brave women students. For me, as a professor at a place like this, watching my feed right now, you cannot but help but be inspired by these young, brave Iranian women, first and foremost. And 2, you cannot help but be inspired by Dr. Ebadi tonight. Whatever you think analytically, whose side would you rather be on? The mullahs or hers? I'm on her side.